I am happy to introduce myself. I'm Marlene Brünn. I'm head of artistic planning of the Deutsche Symphonieorchester here in Berlin. And I'm happy to share the stage today with Rebecca Zimmermann and Alexandra Dariescu. And I will introduce the two of them in a second to you. But first, I just wanted to perhaps explain to you why I chose this topic for today's session. So we at the Deutsche Symphonieorchester, we decided on a very special season's theme for season 23-24 because we decided on no concert without a female composer. Yeah. And which brought us to the wonderful situation that we have in the current season 45 different female composers in our programs. And I can just tell you it's such an adventure and an experience. We have so many new names, of course, in the programs, and especially when it comes to the biographies of all these female composers, it's always super interesting to see what they have gained in the last centuries, but also in the present. So why this topic? Why do we still need to talk about women or diversity, gender gaps, and any other gender-specific injustices in these days? And I brought you a quote to begin. It's, "Today, as in the past, the whole music industry is largely dominated by men. Women are clearly underrepresented, non-binary people and other gender identities are not visible at all and can hardly be identified." That's what the Malisa Foundation states in their research Gender in Music from 2022. And for instance, when you look at the German GEMA, which stands for German Performing Rights Society, in this field of our serious music, we have a percentage of 13.5% proportion of female artists. So composition, lyric writing and publishing, it's just 13.5% women out there. But before we dive deeper into the facts and also into the current status of research, I'm happy to introduce the wonderful two person next to me, and I'll take that to help me. So at my very left, there is Alexandra Dariescu. And Alexandra is a concert pianist. She's a producer and the creator of a very special recital program, The Nutcracker and I. And I just read a quote from her, which I find perfectly to introduce you to today's audience. It says, "It is up to each and every one of us to ensure that, unlike my younger self, children today can learn from an early age all about the great musicians, past and present, regardless of their background and gender, inspiring them to work hard, never give up, and continue to break down those unnecessary barriers that we all too often still put around ourselves today." And yeah, Alexandra, I would say she rules the stages all over the world. She has appearances in the current season with the BBC Symphony Orchestra, the Academy of St. Martin's in the Fields. She returns to Houston Symphony, Detroit Symphony, amongst others. But not only is she a fantastic pianist and performing all these standard repertoire pieces such as Tchaikovsky or Grieg piano concerto, she's also the first ever artist to achieve gender equality in her concerto programming for 3 consecutive years. So welcome to the Classical Next stage.
Thank you so much, Marlena, for having me here at Classical Next. And thanks so much for all of you for showing up and being here with us. It's been an incredible journey, and for me, feminism very much means equal opportunities. And there are 3 things that I really believe in: mirroring our society in our programming, telling both sides of history, and setting real examples for the younger generation. So my approach a few years ago, of course, based on a lot of research and talking to so many people, was, okay, we keep having these discussions, but what can we do, some tangible steps to make a difference? So this is where I started this new initiative of pairing very well-known male concertos with their counterparts, female minorities, in order to tell the whole story. And I have to say, it's been such a beautiful experience and solving so many problems for both promoters and the marketing departments that really need to be our allies. And the way I've done it is all about telling stories. I consider myself, I am an artist. I love storytelling. I love making connections, and I love sharing them with the audience and with the musicians on stage. So I've paired up, one of the most successful pairings was César Franck on the 200th anniversary a couple of years ago, the Symphonic Variations with Nadia Boulanger. Now, you probably all know Nadia Boulanger as a great pedagogue and the greatest teacher, but she was the first ever woman to conduct the New York Phil, the BBC Symphony, the Boston Philharmonic, and all sorts. So it's about getting to know her piece that she wrote to Fantasy for Piano and Orchestra. So I've coupled César Franck with Nadia Boulanger, telling the story that Franck used to go to the Boulanger sisters' home and teach them, and it's been extraordinary. The CEO of Houston Symphony a couple of years ago said that was one of the most successful concerts because it's telling stories. So I don't want to tell you all of my pairings, but a couple of them, like Clara Schumann and Grieg. Clara Schumann influenced Robert Schumann, but everyone thinks that Grieg got his inspiration from Robert. So it's about setting those connections, and the strategy is very, very simple. I do a lot of research. I speak to a lot of musicologists and scientists and writers, and I find out all about these wonderful women composers. Then I speak to the publishing houses, and most of the times, surprise, surprise, women composers are so much more expensive to hire than male composers. And we could have a whole session on that alone. Then it's the triangle. Myself as a soloist, I need to convince the promoters and the promoters that this is amazing repertoire and we need to program it. And then the journey does not stop just because I got a gig. That's wonderful. It's great. But what I do, I speak to the marketing departments. I get in touch with all of them, and I have to say, some do not respond, some do. But when they do, it's wonderful because we can create and tell these stories together. And then the audiences love it because they get to learn something new. The promoters are really happy because I have to say the audience demographic, whenever we pair male and female composers, they're a lot younger. Yeah, we get newer audiences in. The younger kids are really tuned into this equality, and we really, really need to go strong on that. And yeah, it's, for me as an artist, it's so fulfilling to go out there. And I'm not talking just about piano concertos, but for example, today is the birthday of Leocadia Kasperova. Have any of you ever heard of her? Please.
I did.
Yeah, but you two know me very well, so I think you're a little bit biased there. Anyhow, she was Stravinsky's teacher, but no one knows about her. And she wrote an incredible piano concerto that was only performed once by her in 1901. And I'm still looking for wonderful promoters that will want to do this piece. I recorded it for a studio recording with the BBC Symphony, but this piece needs to be heard. So you do that in the first half, and then you put some Stravinsky in the second half, and it's fantastic, you know. So these stories, they need to be told.
Thank you, Alexandra. So to my left, there's Rebecca Zimmermann, who is Head of Development at Konzerthaus Dortmund, and she joins us today as one of the co-founders of a quite new network, which is called ALMA, which stands for Alliance of Leaders in Music and Arts. And as I said, is newly founded. It brings together pioneers in the cultural and creative sector on the path to a newly shaped future, and is a driving force for real transformation and sustainable cultural change in the sector. And I also have a quote from Rebecca, I will tell you. She said, "Not only do institutions need to become more modern, more digital and more sustainable, they also need to network better with each other. Why is the classical music sector behind when it comes to topics such as new work, innovation, female leadership and ecological and social sustainability?" So we count on your answers today, Rebecca, to make this world a little better. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much.
So, referring to this quote, perhaps have you already found an answer to this question? Why, especially, I would say, the classical music sector is somehow always behind the current trends and developments?
Well, so far that question has just brought a lot more questions with it, and I don't really have the answer, but I think it's somewhere in between those questions, that answer. It's, of course, maybe the topic that we all deal with. It's the classical music. It's more the focus maybe in the past, not in the current society, and it's not dealing necessarily with the current topics of society, as theaters do a little bit more, and therefore they have a different setup, I guess. So it's that question. It's maybe also to do with the hierarchies. It's to do with the way it's been the whole time, the way that the business model has been working for many years, and people don't want to change, don't need to change. There is no rules, no policy, nothing, nobody that really pushes for change. So it's somewhere in between that. But I really don't understand, and I think it's a big problem because the relevance at one point will diminish, and we will lose touch.
Yeah,
that's my biggest fear. So that's why I think we need to talk to each other, push for change, address the topics, and be brave about change. Yeah, that's the thing.
Always be brave. Thank you. So that's this for you. So before we face the facts, we discussed beforehand that we wanted to just point out to you that we all are not native speakers in English, and this topic is so sensitive in many ways that we just wanted to say that in case of any unclear wording or improper wording, just don't hesitate to raise your hand and help us in these terms, or raise your question or whatever. Yeah. So how to define feminism in the context of classical music perhaps needs to start with a definition of feminism in general. And I found two of them, which said a movement that campaigns for political practical measures to improve the life chances of women. And the second part of it is theoretical scientific efforts to recognize and overcome discrimination against the female sex as a barrier to scientific and practical knowledge. So just that we are all in the same boat. And I think we are all aware of the situation of women in music. We have already spoken about it. And there are, of course, different fields we now can look into. And before I show you the first chart up there, I just wanted to ask you, Alexandra, because you have now explained so perfectly to us what you are doing, or what you have been doing in the last 3 years. But when was the situation you began to wonder about that it's just men on the podium, or it's just men composing, or it's just men conducting? When was that in your perhaps private or professional life that you began to wonder that perhaps there are also females out there composing and conducting and so on?
So I grew up in communist Romania, so access to information was quite scarce and scarce. That's the one. And I grew up with two female teachers who were so inspiring and wonderful. But that was the role of the women. They were teachers. And on stage, I honestly cannot remember for the life of me until I moved to the UK when I was 17, if I ever saw a woman on stage. And I'm not talking about singers, of course, but a woman pianist. And when I came to the UK, this whole world, new world, changed. And I had access to a lot of CDs, instead of LPs that we would copy on cassettes. Those were the times. So coming to the UK just opened up completely new doors for me. But I think the key in all of this is education. Unless we promote female composers from an early age so that kids grow up with that, grow up with that knowledge and understanding the repertoire, we're not going to go very far, because you can't tell people when they're already, adults that, oh, there is another side of history that we're forgetting, or another side of society that is out there. And from my experience, I'm a professor at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, and I have to say the students are so keen, and as I said, they're so tuned in equality and wanting to learn more. And actually, most of my students have decided themselves. I gave them the choice. Of course, you can't force, because it's not in the curriculum. That's another thing. No one forces the students to learn any of these female composers. So it's a choice. But I have to say, I was so super impressed and proud of them that they chose to program that for their final recitals. And also, we really need role models. We need to see ourselves on stage in order to be able to dream that we can become and we can be there, and there's no barriers. And one thing that I have found is, of course, you can do a lot of initiatives, but it's about changing cultures. And this is what takes the longest. It's changing the mentality for hundreds of years that we've had. The role of a conductor, for example, was incredibly with a lot of authority, whereas the woman was very protective and maternal and nurturing. So we just need to break those barriers.
Yeah, thank you. So, Rebecca, what about you? Or when was the time for you to think about all these kind of inequalities especially in our cultural sector?
Well, the very first moment was a very private moment, actually within my family, when my mother asked me after I studied violin, and after that I didn't really know whether to pursue a career in an orchestra or not, or do the management aspect of culture. And she suggested becoming a teacher for undergrad students, and felt like that was the most safest thing to do. And I realized that there's a fear, maybe also an expectation, maybe because I'm a woman, and my mother is a very progressive one. So that's why I was even more surprised that she would have liked to see me in a more secure kind of job, having something to do in some aspects with music. And then me deciding to go into the culture management and just the businessy side of it, and giving up that kind of security was the first step. And then it was the experiences I made in the beginning of my career, really, when it became clear that money-wise I was getting less than people doing similar jobs, when I was called up in very patronizing ways, or even called Mädchen, and if I got parental advice from my boss that he would have never given to his own child, but then towards me. So you know that, yeah, it sucks. And yeah, that's the moment when I realized that this is something systemic, maybe, or something that roots very deep in the lives of everybody. And then I started talking to my friends, female friends, girlfriends, people I studied with, women I studied with. And I haven't even started talking about the whole aspect of family and getting kids and getting a part-time job and all of these things. But this became clear talking to other female friends and colleagues in the business, that they were facing similar things, like a discrimination, like a sexual harassment. It can, if it's only like the pat on the cheek, like you're a little kid or something. I don't know.
Call you sweet or something.
Or call you sweet, yeah, or comment your outfit, and in a way that you would never comment the outfit of a man. And these little things that became in the amount, in the variety of it, became a clear pattern. And that's when I decided that this needs to be something that we need to address, and for that we need to talk to each other. We need to collect all these experience and become allies for ourselves to start with. And that's how Alma was kind of founded. Yeah.
Yeah. When I listen to you, it's so, it kind of blows my mind, because there are so many different topics in this whole topic of feminism. So we could have, of course, even more panels about this whole topic. But we get a little bit back to first things to the musician's view, or to the musician's side. And there's a wonderful study out there from someone whose name is Melissa Panlazigui, and it was published in 2021, and it deals with women's high visibility roles in German professional orchestras. So the data is from 120 German cultural orchestras with over 2,000 concerts and more than 6,800 performances of individual works. So all from this season 2021. And you can see the first overview of the results here. I hope it can be seen also in the last rows quite good. So you can see there that just 7% of all the concerts they looked at were conducted by women. There you see that less than 2% of all pieces, of all these 6,800 pieces were by female composers, and all these other things I will explain to you in the next couple of minutes. So first of all, let's dive into the female composer thing. So you can see up there, let me turn, that there's this 1.9 percentage chart which just says all works by female composers in this percentage, and for instance Mahler is 3.5 himself, Beethoven is 9.8 himself, and Schubert also 1.9%. So there were similar pieces in terms of the numbers from Schubert as from all female composers. But the point is that we are happy to know that there are female composers and always have been. And the International Encyclopedia of Women Composers lists more than 6,000 of them. And I think this information also blew my mind when I read it. And I thought we could all make up our minds for 30 seconds and think about how many female composers do you have in mind, or how many names come into your mind when you think about female composers for 30 seconds. I will ask afterwards.
I can see steam coming out of some heads.
Don't distract them. I think 30 seconds might be over. So hands up, who knows at least 2 female composers? Wonderful. That's all. Wonderful. Welcome to the panel. So who knows more than 5? Wow, we have a room full of experts here already. More than 10? Hello. We don't need to do this panel. More than 20? Wow. Okay, shall we proceed? More than 30?
Oh wow, look at this.
Very good. Thank you. That's wonderful, actually. But I still need to want to tell you, of course, what you definitely will already know, that for the last centuries, of course, women had little access to education. They were not allowed to educate themselves or hardly allowed to study. Their role was in the family environment mostly. But nevertheless, there were always female composers in the last centuries. And as I mentioned at the beginning, especially when you look at their biographies, you always see that they really fought for their way to be able to compose. And I think the fact that the role of female composers in society today is totally different to the last centuries is also because of these wonderful women from the last centuries who kind of opened the door for our generation now. So the number of female composers today has increased exponentially, but of course, unfortunately, they are far too little known and their works are performed far too rarely, as I will show you now. So in this chart on the left, which comes from bachtrack.com, you can see that in 2023, 36 of the 100 most performed living composers are women, compared to only 11 out of 100 in 2013. So it's already a wonderful development, but still we are on our way. And 7 women are also represented among the 20 most performed living composers in 2013. There were none in the top 20. In contemporary music, the gender gap therefore seems to be gradually closing in our kind of heads, I would say. But if you look up the numbers and look at the chart on the right, we are actually far away from equal justice. This chart on the right is from this mentioned season 2021, and you can see these yellow little numbers on the right. These are the deceased or living female composers which had been performed. So, Alexandra, I have a question for you. So you have devoted yourself, as you said, to a bunch of unknown piano concertos. What can you tell us about the reactions from different target groups? So what did the promoters, you already told us a little bit about the promoters. What would you say, how did orchestra musicians reacted to these probably new pieces to them? How did the audience react? What would you say?
Honestly, hand by heart, it's been such positive reactions from both, from all the sides, from audiences, from musicians on stage, from promoters. Musicians love it because I don't bring the same old, and they love to be challenged. And most of the times they would come and say, why isn't this in the core repertoire? Why have we not heard this before? Audiences go wild because I do have to say what I've noticed, and I don't know if anyone else has, but after COVID, it feels that just our audiences are so oversaturated because they've been online listening to the best versions and 1,000 versions of the same Beethoven concertos and Rachmaninoff. And don't get me wrong, I love them and I play them, and it's fantastic music. But I think audiences are a little bit more risk-taking now after COVID, and they love to see something new and to learn something new. And then they go back and then they research and they find that, whoa, there's actually hundreds of pieces that this composer has written. So it's extraordinary. And for me as an artist, as I said, it's so fulfilling to show something new as well.
To widen your own repertoire as well.
Oh my goodness, yes, that I do. I mean, it's a lot of hard work, but I'm a very curious artist, and I love digging and researching and finding new pieces and learning them. And it's extraordinary. It's really, really lovely.
That is wonderful to hear, actually. And is there a difference? Is there a difference on how two people judge? What would you think? How do people react on a piece by a female composer in comparison to a normal?
Well, first of all, I think
we discussed this beforehand, and we talked about this before, and I didn't want to say normal. Of course not. Male composer.
Whoopsies.
Wow.
So what I find when I step on stage and I'm performing Germain Taillefer, let's say, before Ravel. Taillefer studied with Ravel. The beginning of the two concerti are exactly the same. So it's beautiful. But when I go there, I feel I'm judged twice. Mm-hmm. One for my performance, two for the piece, because it will have been the first time that piece is being heard. So of course, I try my absolute best to be so convincing, and I believe in this music. That's why I play it. But it's extraordinary how positive it is. And when we're talking about quality, that's a really interesting topic. Who defines quality? Yeah. Is it pieces that we've known and lived with for hundreds of years, and we each have a connection? Because I find that the more I listen to a piece, the more I connect with it, and then I love it. But when, let's say, a radio orchestra puts on, we did Dora Pejacevic at the opening of the BBC Symphony season at the Barbican, and it's an extraordinary piece. But you know how many people came to me afterwards and they said, I so wish I could hear it again and again and again to actually understand it, because just one hearing will not do it. You might get the instinct that, oh, wow, this is great. I would love to hear more. But we need to listen to that piece a few times, understand it, do a bit of research, know about the socio-political background, know what that composer was doing around that time, create links, connections, and then you understand it, and perhaps you connect. Maybe you might not love it, but you might appreciate it, admire it, or something, or hate it also. Yeah. I don't think we love every single piece that has been written before by male composers. Do you know what I mean? It's, yeah.
So actually, when you were talking about quality, when we released our season's theme and our kind of dogma, we got, I think, so much feedback. We have never got so many different. So much different feedback from the press, from the audience, from Facebook. So we had a huge shitstorm on Facebook, actually. Which I wanted to tell you about, because the most common sense in this shitstorm was it should not be about a quota. It should be about quality on stage, and that I found so interesting, because I recently spoke to a friend about quality, and she raised this wonderful picture of an orange you buy in a supermarket, so you can decide whether you choose the non-organic or the organic orange, and perhaps the non-organic orange looks better, but the organic orange is healthier. So which one do you choose? It's such individual taste. It's it's somehow resonates with me, because it's also all about taste in our whole business society. And of course, you can say this work has been composed very, very, very well. But on the other hand, when you tell us about the audience, they just have one time to listen to it. So we have just one single time the chance of introducing this piece to the audience. And of course, it should, in my opinion, it's also all about emotions. It's rather about emotions than about the quality of the composition. But
I think, sorry.
Yeah, please go.
The question of who defines quality, I think that's a very relevant question, and I think it's such a societal thing again, and such a what we learned, what everybody does. If it's in Berlin, it's different than in Munich. If it's in Germany, it's different than in southern Italy. If it's, you can find differences there already. Then it's your own background, the money you have, the things you find important. Or the orange example you can also use for clothes. I mean, is it just the price and the fancy label, or is it that it's handmade in Germany and not in wherever, not Singapore, you know what I mean, somewhere far away that is with bad pricing, bad money. It's so many different aspects to that, and I feel like that in classical music, the definition of quality has been made not necessarily by females so far. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why I wonder whether if a male person says that this female conductor is not good, I do challenge how much subconscious bias there is behind that. Yeah. And then we are back to what are we used to see? Do we see female pianists on the stage? Do we see female conductors on stage? Or do we first have to get used to that and loosen and get rid of that subconscious bias?
I couldn't agree more. And also, defining quality is very much about familiarity, I find. I'll give you another example. Rachmaninoff wrote his Rhapsody on the theme of Paganini in the same year as Florence Price wrote her Concerto, 1934. So I decided to couple them. I thought, this is wonderful. Interestingly enough, some of the older journalists picked up on, well, Rachmaninoff is such a fantastic piece, it's so great. Florence Price Concerto, not so much. When I pair these two concerti, I'm not trying to take away from Rachmaninoff. Yeah. Of course, we all love the Rhapsody, and it's the same with everything. But when you're showing the fuller picture, you're showing what happened around that year, it's... One piece is known all over the world. The other one has been played a few times. And why do we have to think that we're taken away from something in order to promote something else? I think there is enough space and enough artistic freedom to promote everything.
Yeah, it's more about widening the repertoire. Yeah, true, absolutely. That's the most common argument I also hear from people. That and I always say we just want to widen the repertoire, not taking away from Brahms, Beethoven, or Bruckner. Yeah.
One more thing, because I just said it maybe in a not so well thought through way. When I said if a man decides that the female conductor isn't that good, I think we need to all be very self-conscious in general as well. And I had that one experience when I was watching La Maestra in 2022. That was the second round.
For everybody who doesn't know La Maestra, it's a competition for young conductors, just female conductors.
And for myself, until then, I haven't seen so many female conductors myself. And I saw them and I compared everyone to Mirga, because Mirga was artist in residence at Konzerthaus. And so I was judging by, oh, she tries to be like Mirga. Oh, she should be more like Mirga. And when I realized what's wrong with my... And yeah, and it's weird, but this happens even though I try to be like, I'm all for it. But even if I'm already so biased and just looking to compare to something I already know, then this is like a key thing, at least to me.
Yeah,
it is.
But yeah, wonderful that you are now aware of this, and then
how fabulous Mirga is. Yeah, that's true.
So we dive back into the research and this wonderful study. You can see here the proportion of male and female soloists in these concerts. Interestingly enough, it's all about male, of course, but there's one exception in so-called A orchestras. In Germany, we have these A, B, C, D orchestras, which means I think it's all about funding and it's all about the size. And interestingly enough, the A orchestras have had more female soloists chosen for 2021 than the others. Perhaps I was wondering, I don't know the answer, but perhaps it was all about these bigger names we have, because there are a few very big famous female soloists in our world, like Hilary Hahn, Marta Agerich, Patricia Kopaczynskaya. That could be an answer, but I'm honest, I don't know. So looking into the orchestra, I brought you a quote from Maestro Celibidache, because he used to say, "Don't play like a ladies' orchestra." And it's wonderful when you have this in mind, because Celibidache can still be happy about 2/3 of the people in the German orchestras are still men, and 1/3 women, or a little bit more than 1/3. And on the right hand, you can see that at the end of 2021, the orchestra members between 25 and 44 years reach nearly equal representation. This might be the case, perhaps because of the behind the screen audition, which became more popular. This might be the case because of the academy graduates, which are now even more women than men. And we were discussing the people 50 years up, because probably it's also the case because for many decades there were no women allowed to the orchestras, for a long time. But if you, for instance, look at the group of 60 to 64 years old, they lead here with 73% of men. And the groups starting with the age of 50 are also the groups with the highest number of people. So we are still in the orchestra, but we look at the leading members somehow at the orchestra board. So also here you can see 2/3 men, 1/3 female, and even more interesting is that there are just 5 orchestras, which I marked with this red circle, with more female than men in their board. And we had 62 orchestras to watch. So yeah, a lot. And so the majority of orchestra boards has 1 female board members and 2 or 2 for men. So we already spoke a lot about conductors. Here you can have the proof of the current situation. So there were 428 concerts conducted by men, 33 concerts conducted by women, and also when it comes to leadership positions such as artistic directors or general music directors, you can also see that there's still a long way to go. So Alexandra, I just heard from Gabriela Montero that she prefers somehow working with female conductors. What would you say, or what are your experiences? Are there any difference between a man or a woman on stage conducting, or should we rather not focus on this topic at all because it perhaps widen the gap?
Well, look, the dream is that we drop all of this male and female and everything else, from conductors, from soloists, from composers, from everything, and we are being treated as we are. From experience, and I have to say, until 6-7 years ago, I don't think I had ever played with a female conductor before. So my observation is that women conductors are incredibly well prepared, like so detailed, you would not believe. And especially, of course, with the core repertoire, but with the unknown repertoire, when you have to do so many changes because the scores are not great, or they're still manuscripts, or all sorts of things, the female conductors tend to be really, really detailed. And that's great because we don't have a very long rehearsal time and we just need to get through stuff. I would say they're perhaps a little bit more empathetic, so they have more care, more empathy. What you were talking about, people patting you on the back or something, they might not pat me on the head after I finish my concerto. They might not tell me just the second before I go on stage, "Oh, I really hope you don't go wrong," as a funny joke, which is so not funny, and other things. "Oh, you're wearing red tonight." "Oh, of course you are." And other things. But I think the most important and the feedback that I've been getting or talking to musicians from stage and audiences is the perception. Because we're so used to have male conductors out there. So I think the way conductors in general go on stage, you need to have a lot of confidence. Yeah, you need to rule the room, and confidence comes from a lot of opportunities. And lots of the female conductors might not have had so many opportunities, and sometimes they are put in front of a really big orchestra, and experience shows. They might be nervous, and they will show it a bit more. And every comment, it's so interesting, the psychological approach. So myself as a soloist, I come in for the rehearsal the day before, the general rehearsal, and I go out. That's it. I don't necessarily interact so much in dialogue with musicians, as opposed to a conductor that stays there the whole week, and they need to know everything. And sometimes I do come into very tense rooms. But what I'm talking about perception is women might be seen that they embellish a bit too much, or they speak too much, or they sing too much. And I've heard that just in the last year or so. Whereas men can be very direct. Trumpets, you're out of tune. Do this, do that. Women, from my experience, don't do that. And sometimes there are double standards, that women will be perceived very emotional, but men are very charming. Or women sing too much, men are passionate. Women are bossy, but men are assertive. So it's that sort, and it's a perception. It's how we've been taught. It's stereotypes. It's nothing else. Because at the end of the day, the concerts go really, really well. And of course, it's a matter of taste, whether you like someone, a musician or not. But it shouldn't be about male or female. And of course, if you look at the tradition, men have been in power for hundreds of years and they have so much authority. So we need to break those barriers, women not to become the teachers. And I really hope we'll get to speak to soloists and competitions and things like that. So women shouldn't be the teachers and the men on stage to be the artists. It's time to celebrate the differences, whatever differences we may have, and take out the labels, because what really matters at the end of the day is the music. Nothing else. We're all humans and we strive to bring joy to people and to enjoy, and we do transform lives through our art. And the moment we take out labels, then I'm hoping things will be better and we'll focus on the important stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to chances for female conductors, there's a little bit of hope. Also, in this study, so you can see these little yellow quarters on the left. This is the percentage of female conductors, and these little triangles rather on the right is the percentage of female conducting students. So this is getting this is increasing. But as we already discussed, this is not coming automatically, probably. And I just want to go back a little bit and speak about all these challenges, especially female conductors face on stage, because I think there is they have much in common with also female leadership position. And what would you think, Rebecca? Do you think that women in female leadership in leadership positions are also still being judged kind of differently, or if so, why is that the case?
Definitely they are, but I want to add one more thing about the conductors. That's something I was just thinking about the other day, that I would be really interested to know, but of course that will never happen because it just can't. But what would happen if we were to have the blind conducting, as in nobody knows whether that's a female or a male, and not even the orchestra knows, because I think we are back to the whole biases thing, and we just had it with Malwitz in Munich, that there was some controversial discussion whether she was doing too much dancing, too much performance, too much whatever, but then who's discussing that? And if the orchestra is not that responsive as it should be, it could also be the unconscious bias of each and every musician in that room that maybe is not used to following the female leader. So I think conductors are triple in disadvantage, female conductors, than if you have an instrument and you could do the blind audition or the blind, so there is no tool to really.
Yeah, because it's the own body.
That's all.
Which is the tool. Yeah.
And in I think it's the exact same thing, the double moral thing. It's the same thing in leadership. It's management. It's not even cultural institutions. It's just everywhere. With the difference, I feel that the whole quota thing was introduced into the
DAX companies
in 2015, and there's a lot more attention to it, I think, and a lot more expectations also. And cultural institutions have managed so far to kind of fly under the radar a little bit, and they don't really have to, show or prove or meet any numbers or any targets when it comes to diversity in any way. And if we look at, especially, again, theaters, I think, are a little different, but if we look into the classical concert houses and we look who's employed, we look who's on stage, we look, it's embarrassing.
You before our talk, you told me about your Google result, and I really want you to tell the audience about that, because
I had two quite funny experiences yesterday and today with the internet, or KI. First, I asked ChatGPT to list me, please, female general managers, Intendantinnen, and I got a lot of male names and wrong female names. And I asked ChatGPT to correct, and I got more male names, and just no answer at all and I did it quite a while, and I got really upset at ChatGPT, and it kept excusing himself or itself. And and at the end, it actually said, well, I'm sorry, but I'm a KI and I can only refer to what I've been fed. So I asked, what have you been fed? Which information? Where do you get your information from? And then it gave me some abstract blah, where apparently it got its information from. And at the end, I was just, it asked me whether it could help me more. And I was like, no, I'm upset. I'm done. And I'm so sorry. Please contact me again if you have further questions. Anyway, that was hilarious, but also very shocking, to be honest, especially because I asked questions. I asked, like, who is the director of Musikhochschule München?
Lydia Grün.
Exactly. And it gave me male names. And then I asked, do you know who Lydia Grün is? And it gave me some Sesame Street person, I think, who's named Lydia Grün. And then I said...
He's 3 years behind old.
Okay, then that's why. That's why. And then I asked, can you guess why I'm asking about the Dean of Hochschule and Lydia Grün? Could you maybe transfer my two questions if they have anything to do with each other? And then it was again, I'm sorry, I can't. And who's Lydia Grün? It's some Sesame Street, whatever. So I got really upset. And then today I wanted to get an overview and about which institutions are run by women in Germany, which classical institutions. And I Googled Intendantinnen Konzerthaus.
So female intendant.
So female intendant, yeah. And the Google suggested that I was having a typo and I meant the male intendant, and just gave me male names. So please do that. I was shocked.
It was kind of shocking.
I was shocked. And if you do type in female conductors, all you get is Malwitz at the moment. And that's only as if she was the only female conductor at the moment. So it's and that's where, that's where we start. I mean, this is our search engine where the whole world uses, and all it does is give you the male version of things.
Yeah, wherever you look, it's always more work to kind of find the female composers, the female leaders, everywhere.
And there's it's a systemic thing. And I mean, this great book, Invisible Women, you should probably maybe all know, where it's very clear that even the heart attack is the heart attack of a man, that medicine is being taught, and not the heart attack of a woman. And cars are designed for the bodies of men and not of women, so security standards are different. And let me not get into that too much, but it's a very systemic problem we have here. But it's all over the place.
Thank you.
What was the original question?
No, I think you answered to it. You answered to it. And I wanted to show you one proof. It's unfortunately just until 2014. In the end, I didn't manage to find better numbers, but it shows the Intendantleitung. So this of the German Rundfunk und Sinfonieorchester, so radio and symphony orchestras in Germany. And as you can see, 0 women, 0 women, 0 women, 2 women in 2006, 1 in 2010, and again 0. It's quite impressive. I think now we have a few Intendantinnen in Germany as head of an orchestra, but yeah. It's still not equal at all, of course. We dive quickly into the gender pay gap at cultural sector. This is also just for Germany. I excuse myself for that. So you can see the occupational groups which I point out here is text, visual arts, music and performing arts. So music got a little increase of 2% in the last 6 years. And then the occupational group music has also been segmented in very different fields. And I brought you 4 of them. So composers, conductors, musicians and singers. And especially when it comes actually to freely negotiated income, as it is for composers and conductors especially, it's super high. It's unbelievable high. And that's also what this study I found says, that the higher the qualification, the more likely and the greater is the gender gap. And the more income is freely negotiated, the more likely and the greater is the gender gap. The gender pay gap, sorry. So, before we go there. I let you perhaps already read that. But Rebecca, perhaps we can now dive a little bit deeper into Alma, because I think that is a wonderful example of, perhaps how to make the world a little bit better and how to find allies, how to discuss these topics in a wonderful surrounding. And please tell us a little bit more about the new network.
Well, it started, like I already mentioned, out of the own need for a network of people that I trust, like a safe space where we can actually share what happens to us, or what we experienced, or the discrimination, or just anything that feels unjust or felt unjust back then and still feels unjust, of course. And then with that, I just began a search. I mean, by now we have a few female network in music, which is great. We have the focus on the management side of it, and it still is the main focus is the networking aspect of it, that we invite everybody. We use the generic feminine, and it's funny because we don't exclude anybody. We don't exclude men, but men just seriously do not feel like we talk to them when we use the female version of words, which is funny because we as women are used to, of course, feeling responsive to the male version of it. So we are, but I don't want to get into the gender debate. But so anyway, it's a network of people. It's an informal network so far, but we have discussed actually and are planning and evolving into a corporate with business models and fields of business. That's what I want to say. But the core is just the safe space for anybody to discuss what's happening. Also the safe space and the empowerment, especially for women, to actually dare something, to come in and present themselves. And I mean, we have so many highly skilled women in music industry and the music management with their top-notch education, with passion about topics, with skills that are so needed, and barely a chance or not that many chances to actually apply themselves or even try and error. And so we invite everybody to present what they think is their skill and to discuss and develop and just become more innovative. That one. And dare and also ask questions and the safe space. I said that a couple of times. We have a few formats, a few ways of giving the stage, a few programs where we invite people to show their skills and present them, or also just hang out and discuss anything from part-time jobs to parental leave to getting back to job to pay gap to actually the whole topic of headhunting and the Findungskommission, how they are being finding commissions, how they are being chosen, and how the whole topic of power and power abuse. So like any different topics and different formats for that. But we defined for ourselves that the future will be very clear about consulting. There is, if we look at arts consulting, it's mainly the men-driven businesses there. It's also about headhunting. It's only mainly men-driven businesses there that do headhunting for cultural institutions, and some of them don't even have any expertise in culture, but they call themselves experts in culture. But if you look at their biographies, there's no culture at all. And that just works in culture, that's a funny thing. Anyway, and it's mentoring. So these are the three focuses that next to just the informal safe space network, we are pushing for and try to use and build up to make the change more scalable, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So you can all become a member afterwards.
It's free now still,
it's free.
So that might change.
Come and join the network, Alma. I brought you another study from 2021, which was about gender diversity in the whole music industry. So not about, not only in the classical music sector, but in referring to all genre, and they did interview with nearly 400 members of the music business, and these are the results. You have probably already had an eye on it. So 1 in 7 women believe that men and women have equal opportunities. That's actually unbelievable in my view. And same with the second point on the left side, which says 96% of the women from the music industry have experienced discrimination in relation to their gender. And of course, as you can imagine, after these 2 points, women are much more likely than men to face barriers to their professional development, in particular stereotypes, prejudice, or old boy networks. And all of this has, of course, a huge effect on women's careers when it comes to representation and salary. So how to improve this? This study asked the people, and they answered as followed. It all depends on the next generations, as we already discussed a little bit, I think, so that we all have hope in the younger generations that they are more open and more eager to make the change. What Rebecca was referring to, it's also all about mentoring and female networks, which are considered to be quite useful. And this is something I would really like to discuss right afterwards with you. And of course, quotas, as we did at DSO with a female composer in every concert, is always an adequate means of doing it. And interestingly enough, it's again 1 in 2 women who like this idea of quotas, and just 1 in 3 men. What I was mentioning, this mentoring thing and these female networks, because we were discussing this beforehand, whether this is kind of a good idea just to focus on that. I had a wonderful discussion with a friend of mine quite recently, and she said perhaps we shouldn't just how to say, we should implement, or we should go into these so-called old boy networks rather than do our own, because we should it should be one big party in the end. And perhaps, you had a quite strong opinion on that as well.
Well, definitely both. And it doesn't make sense to have a parallel universe now just for women and just one for men, and nobody will benefit from that. But it's both, I think, and I would have a problem by feeling dependent on a boy club letting me in order to make a change. So that's why I feel it's both, and it's about allyship. But then I said also about the generic feminine. We look for allyships at Alma, but there's not many men that find their way in, because they. And if the generic feminine is feminine, if that's already the thing too much for men to enter and become part of that network, then that's not. It's gonna be difficult to convince them to become allies. But
still, these of course traditional networks with mostly men in it. That these are the networks where the power is, and
it's doing.
I very much believe in collaborative work and not separating. Let's not do what they've done for hundreds of years. If we want to be included, let's be inclusive. And I think, I think we need. I don't know, it's a collective responsibility. One, we can't leave it to the next generation. It's up to us now. Now is when we need to make the change. And it's a wider social change, and the conversations need to be between all of the parts. I have been to many women-only meetings, and I don't think there was a lot of talking, but I'm not really sure whether the action points were actually done, because we need to work together. I also have talked to the boss of a really, really big radio station, one of the most important ones around, and he actually said that on International Women's Day, on the 8th of March, they only program female music, absolutely no male whatsoever. And they said that's the lowest audience they ever get the entire year. So also music festivals.
The solution, actually.
It can't be. No, we can't just separate everything. And women-only festivals, then the audience is not really there. So that's why I'm talking about a collaborative approach. I think women should be helping women. And when you help other women, that does not diminish your own path, because there is space for everyone out there. I belong to an amazing society or something. It's called Friends of Europe. And they've got a fantastic program called Young European Leader. And basically every year they take on a lot of industry leaders from mainly politics, media, science, business, and a few artists. And I've been involved a lot with them. They do 3 conferences a year. And being in the room with policymakers and with people that actually make laws and they decide on, they've got a lot of authority. But they asked me to write an op-ed, and this was at the beginning of the pandemic. So I had quite a bit of time to think about this. And I came up with a concept, I don't know if it's of any use, the concept of headline artists. When you look on a poster, you see the name of the conductor, the soloist, and the composer. Yeah, this triangle. So the moment that it's only male and white, it's not really reflecting our society. It's not inclusive. It's not diverse. It's not showing the younger generation that we can do it. So how about we try, and this is incredible what you've done at DSO, Marlena, with always having a female composer or a female soloist or something, that you're showing that there is diversity in our world, and it's incredible. But if we were all to adopt that and to have a true reflection of our society, I think things would change. But we need these action points, and we need, I think in this day and age, it's a choice whether you want to program only male composers, conductors, soloists.
Can I add something about the female network, or the it's not about parallelism or about the I agree, but I also have the experience that as long as we have a system where so many, especially younger ones, that I'm talking now about, again, management professions, where you step in out of a study context where you are one of many women and there's no hierarchy in between, and then you get into the businessy side and the cultural management side, where you still have the male on top and then the male leaders, and then you're the literally young woman starting, and you experience weird things. And for that, you need the female network that is just female network, where you can actually share that and realize it's not just you, it's not your fault. You didn't, do something wrong, or you weren't stupid, or you weren't just a small little child that asked a stupid question that needed patting on the head and saying, well, next time be smarter or something. But for that, we need that only female context still, as long as we have this situation of harassment.
Yeah.
Let's call it.
So in that case, fellowships or some sort of mentorship schemes, which they exist in politics, in business, in any other industry, but do we have them? I mean, in the soloist world, we don't belong to a union. We are literally free, like birds.
Yeah.
But
so we discussed that beforehand, that Maren Alsop has this wonderful scholarship for young female conductors, I think, to mentor them. And we were thinking of anything similar in management positions. And I just thought of Frauen in Musik und Medien. It's Women in Music and Media in Germany. They have installed this mentorship program for a couple of years now.
There's also Frauenbüro NRW that is doing a great mentorship. It's coming, it's getting bigger.
But of course, it always needs your own effort.
Yeah, and it's something, also a phenomenon in the cultural sector, I think, that we are so slow in learning that talking to each other and becoming, not the You know, you're a woman, I'm a woman. It's your or me.
It's
but
women helping women.
Exactly, and just
It's not
common. No, and we need to learn to trust each other, I think, and that's a huge first simple but difficult step. And I forgot where I was going, but yeah. That's good enough, maybe.
So we are nearly running out of time. I actually wanted to speak to you about dual leadership, because this is such an interesting topic. I'm not quite sure whether we can speak about it for 1 minute, and you can perhaps explain to the audience what is that all about, and why is that perhaps the future of also our sector, because in other business branches it's already kind of common sense to share the responsibility with someone else, so not to have just one head on top, but two.
Yeah, I think, but that's a little, I would say, a little on the side of the whole feminism discussion. But it's just a general thing that I think would change the whole sector to a better sector if we would get away or let go of this whole one person. And I'm sorry to use that picture, but it still is mostly a very old white man who's been on the top of an institution for many, many years. Let's say 20, 30, I don't even know what the longest is. There's a great research going on about the endurance of some of these intendanten. And no other business model works like that unless it's a family-owned business. But there's a huge difference between a family-owned business and a subsidized cultural institution. So with a whole different outcome and a whole different Auftrag, whatever that is in English. And so I think it is something that would change the danger of power abuse, the danger of this whole sector of losing touch with time, losing touch with society, with the city they're in, if we would have the shared leadership model. And that would also open up more spaces in leadership that then can be taken by women without the danger of anybody taking anything away from anybody. It's just more and shared. It's shared power, it's shared work, it's shared everything, different perspectives. So in my opinion, it is definitely a way forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So I have the last picture for you with 3 questions to you as a self-reflection, and perhaps you can just take a picture with your phone and take this with you home. So I read it out loud. Are organizations that I serve providing equal opportunity for all genders? Please do ask yourself, could I be gender biased? And what can I do myself to work for equality in my professional life? And the future, so 5 kind of sentences for you. Please be the change. And Dorothee Keitman from the Konzerthaus already said it yesterday. It just needs to be one single person with an idea or with something to change things. And you can all be the change. Please be open to encouraging, developing and promoting women to mitigate gender bias. Do include social and political topics to your programming, because I think that is what we really need to do to stay relevant and to become even more relevant. And be brave enough and dream about feminist utopias. And please don't give up. I know it's hard, but please don't give up. So thank you for your attention. So if you're interested, there's a quite huge list of sources. If you're interested in this, just hit me up and I am happy to share that. And yeah, thank you for this. Thank you for your attention. And of course, I saw the questions from the women there. Please.
Hello, Sally Greenaway from Australia, composer. I just wanted to share something positive that's coming out of Australia. I'm from the capital city, Canberra, which doesn't have a full-time professional orchestra. It's a part-time orchestra. It doesn't receive the highest level funding like the major orchestras like Sydney Symphony or Melbourne Symphony. And yet they are leading the way in the country with programming. Their conductor is Jessica Cottis. their CEO is also female. Their administration team is 50-50. And they have now done 4 years in a row now of more than 40% of their programming is Australian music by living composers. And those living composers are 50-50 men and women.
Wow.
So I wanted to say that, but I will pass across to Felicity. I just wanted to say that just to inspire people that you don't have to be an A-listing organisation. You can be a smaller or medium, or even if you lead a chamber ensemble or you're a soloist, you are part of this conversation as well. It's not just about the big bodies that get major funding.
That is true. Thank you. Please.
Hi, just quickly, my name is Felicity Wilcox. I'm a researcher and composer, Australia. I've published and been an advocate for gender in music since 2016. I set up the Gender Equity Committee of the Australian Guild of Screen Composers in 2016, and then I've been publishing research in this space, including the first anthology of screen music by female composers, which came out 2 years ago in 2022. And last year, I published a report on women and minority genders in music. It focuses on music creators. It's across genres. It's based on research that I did with a gender diverse researcher, and we co-authored the report. It's focusing on the music industries of Australia and New Zealand. And I think it might be of interest to you guys because what you presented is very Euro-focused. As Sally mentioned, there's a lot happening in Australia in this space. And the thing in the report, I would just 2 points. It takes into account gender diverse experience. So it's inclusive of other genders. So importantly, we're not just talking about women in this space, we're talking about people who identify as different genders.
Thank you that you mentioned that,
Yeah.
because that was also something we were discussing beforehand, that we are absolutely
There's
aware
very little data.
of that. Yeah.
There's very little data. And because I've been researching in this space for, 8 years and finding no data on gender diverse people in music, I went out of my way to recruit a co-author and a co-designer of our study. We looked at over 200 creators. We have much more qualitative data, which I think would be interesting because those of us in this who are active in this space understand the terrible numbers. We see them again and again and again. But why? What are the reasons behind the lack of representation? And the study that I co-authored with Barry Shannon, it actually has really strong qualitative sort of testimonials from interviews and an online survey that we did about what the barriers are. We identified 12 key barriers to participation and, importantly, the effect that has. And you spoke to some of that. And I just want to say with the mentoring question, what we found was that while any mentoring is good, same-gender mentoring is much more effective. So when you're talking about, so thank you for the work you're all doing, because it's amazing that you're all doing in your ways the work. And I'm sure there's lots of people in this room who are doing work in similar spaces in their own way. But the same-gender mentoring is more meaningful. And I would also suggest a model of mentoring where we actually mentor up. So we mentor the powerful older white men about what they can do to include other kinds of people in their spaces. So when you talk about inclusion of Alexandra, about multiple genders in the mentoring space, I would suggest that maybe, we mentor sort of up, and I don't like that hierarchical expression, but let's face it, that is the way it is. And that, setting up mentoring spaces where women and gender diverse people can find the mentoring that really matters, because it's not just about the younger generation. The younger generation aren't going to move upwards if they can't see senior women and gender diverse people in the top echelons. So we actually need to be active across all the generations. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah.
Hello, my name's Kirsty Matheson. I'm a I've been an orchestral double bass player for some time, so I could do an entire week on prejudice in the orchestral world. I wanted to say two things. I don't know if anyone was at Roger Wilson's talk about more to do with equal representation in orchestras, etc. We've got Black Lives in Matter, Black Lives in Music in the UK, which they campaign for equal representation of people of all different skin colours, for want of a better word. But there isn't for females. There isn't anyone campaigning on that front, which I think is really kind of needed. And there is an ensemble in the UK called Her Ensemble, which is all made up of female players. And one of their members is a woman called Christine Anderson, and she wrote a really interesting blog post on the Musicians Union website. You can look it up on Google. It's called The Campaign for Female Mediocrity. And it was interesting, we were talking about, female composers and conductors. There's this ridiculous thing of when you're a female conductor, somehow you're supposed to represent all females. And yet we will have male conductors come up who are not very good, and they're not supposed to represent all male conductors. And it was just an interesting point I wanted to say.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think before we leave the room, there is a QR code on the side. I was asked to mention that, where you can just register yourself that you have been here at this panel. And if there's anything else or anybody else who want to say something, if not, thank you for your attention. I know that has been a lot of numbers, and I really hope that you can take something out of it and have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.